All right, so we are good to go, and we're going right now. I'm gonna close this because that's pointless. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. So are you curious to why I'm interviewing you?
I think that we had a conversation briefly yesterday, and that you wanted to um, interview me for a perspective on a person who is older and has witnessed a lot of things in the past.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, it's gonna be kind of like a free flowing interview. It's basically a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll ask you. I kind of have like a list of loose questions, and you can kind of interpret them however you want and answer them however you want. If for some reason you don't want to answer a question, you don't have to answer a question. And then we can kind of just like
My lawyer here, please.
yeah, we can we can just kind of roll off these questions and just like we can just keep talking. And at the end of it, I'm supposed to listen to the interview or the conversation again, and I'm supposed to interpret different sociological theories that might play into, I guess, you and how you perceive your life, how you lived your life, and what's important to you. So this could take any time between 20 and 30 minutes, or it could go longer depending on how long we keep talking. So
Talking to a psychology major, so I'm very familiar with the kind of
okay,
interpretation.
okay, sweet.
Okay.
So yeah, let's just start off with some basic questions. How do you feel?
I feel very, very good from many perspectives,
Mm-hmm.
physically, mentally, um, and spiritually.
Spiritually, um,
Yes.
what would you say of those three is like the most important for health wise,
The most important for health wise
or
is very,
or or just the most important to you, being physically fit, mentally fit, or spiritually fit?
I don't know how you can separate them out because when I've had illnesses and some serious illnesses, your focus does become spiritual. Um, and I guess so that when things are going well, spiritually, you're at peace. Um, and when you're challenged with health or other problems, you kind of have to just give yourself over and anticipate that your spiritual life will be there for you.
Okay. Um, that's so like going back to some of those instances. Have you noticed like a change in your spirituality as you've aged?
Yes,
How so?
I think that as you age, you obviously are facing the reality of your dying, of your mortality,
Mm-hmm.
and so that and you're losing every day. It's a time of loss. You're losing family. You're losing um, friends. You're losing physical abilities, and so you do focus a little bit more maybe on an afterlife and on the relationship that you've had with God, which does evolve, hopefully, with maturity. And sometimes when you're overwhelmed, you sort of have to just quietly wait for that veil to pass so that you can be at peace again. It's it's a road.
Yeah.
And the evolving of your family is always wonderful because you're watching new life constantly. And you know that these are all these important people that are going to be here when you're not here.
Yeah.
So when you have children and grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren, that's a wonderful joy, a wonderful comfort, and supports you when other things are a little more difficult. And you see your life coming to some end, and new life evolving all the time. And that's happening.
That's beautiful. So, speaking on family, how has your role in the familiar sense, like in family, how has it changed throughout the years? Clearly, you went from a mother to grandmother. Now, excitingly, you're a great grandmother, and you're about to have some more
Yes.
great grandchildren on the way, thanks to Allie. And how would you say that?
Colin.
And who?
And Colin.
And wait, are they pregnant again?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yes. Oh yes.
No one tells me anything. Well, that's super exciting. I still haven't met baby Sophia.
You snooze, you lose.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. Yes, we're a productive crowd.
Yes, we are.
And we welcome Marley.
And Marley's the sweetest.
Welcome her.
We really
Yes.
love Marley, and she plays a great role in Olivia's life right now.
Yeah.
But how has that role changed for you? How has that transition kind of affected the way that you perceive yourself? I'm wording this really weird, but have you noticed like a change in yourself with each role change that you have?
Yes.
Would you like describe that kind of transition that you felt, maybe starting when you became a mother or when you became a grandmother? And
well, I think I would have to start further back than that, and thinking of being a child in a family where we had 3 children and 4 adults, so our conversation was more adult than at some households. And my mother and father being older when they married and had children, and losing my own mother at 13, which changes your life. You grow up very quickly, getting married very young. So it's a whole evolvement. And had children very young. And looking back, I wish that I had been more mature, because it was difficult when you're very young to be able to be the kind of mother you can look back on now and wish that you had been able to do that. So that we come a long journey, and of course, my husband, your grandfather, my lover, the father of my children, I can't separate that out from my involvement in my life.
mm-hmm.
And we fortunately have been able to grow together, to share the delights of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So I get, here I am, but you can't get here without having that history too.
Yeah.
I've been experienced some serious illnesses that physically, as far as the medical profession is concerned, I shouldn't be here. So that every day is a gift. I think I think that you evolve from many, many circumstances. All of my children were different. You always think that you are the main influence on your children, and you are an influence, but they're a product also of their generation. And I've been fortunate to have wonderful children. They've been supportive to us, and we find ourselves in a happy space. We're together. We also face what is probably inevitable, that one of us will survive the other. I think that's one of the hard things to look at. And but we have had a lot of sadness in our life, with loss, with siblings, with friends, with parents. And we have to trust in the God that we believe in, that we will continue to evolve, either one of us alone. And I think we're in a happy place. And your contribution has a lot to do with it.
Well, you have a lot of factors contributing these days, so going back to
the world we grew up in us also. We grew up before the Second World War. What we experienced historically has a lot to do with who we are now and people of my generation.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to skip through to some of the questions I have down the line.
My answers are too long.
No. I'm just rolling off of kind of what you're getting into. So historically, like, I didn't grow up, all I know is the 90s and above. And, I mean, even things for me have drastically changed with the internet and just politics in general. And, like, it seems like a lot has changed for me within the last 20 years that I've been, coherent and kind of understanding of the world around me. But, you've experienced so much more. And so what are some of the, you can pick as many as you like, but, if you can pick three, some life-defining events that have happened to you in history that kind of shaped maybe who you are today. And they can be historical, they can be personal, just kind of like off the top of the head, if you think of like an event that maybe kind of shaped you who you are, or had a lot of influence on your life, whether you wanted it to or not.
I think experiencing the Second World War, even though we were not in the midst of combat or in countries that suffered that kind of devastation, but remembering, even as a young person, when they bombed Pearl Harbor and how that was so unbelievable, and then as we went through the war and the president died, and at that point in time, I was 11 years old, 10 years old. In my lifetime, we'd always had the same president. We had the same pope. We had the same, nothing had changed in that long period of time. That never happened again. Mm-hmm. And so the whole war in itself was, and then the bombing of Hiroshima. That was one big thing.
Death of your mother, right?
Well, obviously, Grandpa mentioned the death of my mother, but I was talking from a historic perspective. And then when Kennedy was assassinated, that was a horrendous thing for the country.
And also, I know how much Catholicism plays such an important role in your life. JFK's assassination kind of took a toll on the Catholic community as well. Am I incorrect in that?
I think it did, because obviously being the first Catholic president was something that we certainly were proud of. But I think it was more the enormity of the fact of what happened, that he was assassinated. And when 9/11 occurred, my children then were young adults. And it was so overwhelming to them. And I related to how we felt when Kennedy was assassinated, that this was something you couldn't even comprehend. As far as my Catholicism, we grew up at a time when we lived in a very segregated life. And I'm not speaking about white and African American. I'm speaking about Catholics, Protestants, and Jews. You grew up in a neighborhood where everybody was Catholic. Mm-hmm. And then, it was just, that's how people were. We were all clustered. I find that the way that we live now is so much more Christian. And so my Catholicism obviously is important, and but I think spiritually, I recognize that the presence of a divine being, and obviously for Catholics, this is Jesus, and for all Christians that's true. But I find that people find spirituality in other ways.
I mean, speaking on how you're talking about how it's more of a global global, yeah, but a more unified Christianity, and I know like a lot of popes have changed in the last lifetime.
Yes.
How has and you don't have to go into too much detail, and this is just more kind of my personal curiosity. How has your view on Catholicism changed throughout the year? Because I know you talked about how your spirituality has changed and it's grown stronger, but has your view on Catholicism or maybe the church changed in the past 80 or so years?
Well, I think from the time I was rather young, I have been a critical of the church hierarchy for many reasons, and have experienced in my lifetime different popes, and without telling the local authorities, they would throw me out. I have not always, I found discouragement in the leadership of some of our popes. But the Pope doesn't even have to be a priest. He's the head of the church. He's the bureaucratic head of the church. Mm-hmm. And the interpretation for many people about the Pope is, I don't find that I need to be in lockstep with the Pope to be a Catholic. Certainly, I don't find that I need to be in lockstep with the Pope to be a Christian. And so the Pope is the head of the church, he'll give you an idea. When we were growing up, he would say, here's the steeple, open it up, and here are the people. Mm-hmm. We are the church. The people are the church. The Pope is a transient person. So I guess I've been excommunicated by now.
I don't know. I don't think the most recent Pope would excommunicate.
No, I'm very fond of Francis.
That's good. I like him a lot too.
Yes, and it's been a fresh air. Mm-hmm. I don't interpret my spirituality necessarily through the structure of the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I do believe in Jesus Christ, and I think many people worldwide hold Christian values who don't call themselves Christians.
I believe that is very true.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think we're going off on a tangent right now, but I'm enjoying this
conversation.
I do think that a lot of people that are so critical of organized religion kind of forget about Christian values and the role in their life. I was thinking about that recently. I was talking to Leah about it because, I don't often attend church, but, everything I've learned about being kind, I learned from my mother, who learned it in church, and I learned it in the Sunday school classes that she taught. And so it played such a huge role in my life, even if I'm not exactly active in the church community, and like how much Christian values kind of shape my life. And all right, so I'm gonna get us back on track, and I'm gonna.
Not hard to keep on track.
How are you feeling right now about the interview? You feel?
Well,
Hey.
Yeah, we have this room at 11:30 for like a group project.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
Let me pause this real quick, and then I'll
Okay.
go that up. Hey, Grandma, I just got kicked out of this private room because apparently someone rented it. I'm going to pause this and find a new room, and I'm going to call you back in just a minute, okay?
Okay. All right. Okay, John.
Sorry about that. It's like
That's okay.
It's the end of the semester, so it's group project time, and so everybody has all these big rooms booked.
Nice guy.
I didn't want to rent out a whole room just to do interviews, so right now I'm in like an empty conference room. So hopefully nobody comes in here in the next
All right.
15 or so minutes. How are you feeling about the interview right now? Back to the question.
Well, I'm enjoying it.
You are?
So
Good.
I'd like to spend time with you.
I know, and I feel like oh no.
Oh, you're okay. You're back.
Yeah, it's Red Cross calls me like 3 times a day because of my blood type to donate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I love talking to you and catching up, but very
questions that we need to get
yeah,
through.
very very few times I get down to the nitty gritty, juicy details type of thing.
Okay.
So this is a good excuse for me to pick your brain.
Okay.
But yeah, and if you need a break or anything like that, or water, just let me know.
Water here. So.
Okay, cool. I just got refilled on water as well. So let's see where I'm at. Okay. So we were talking about history and Catholicism, and historical events that kind of shaped your life and how you perceive the world. And then, so I'm going to go back to some more personal events, if that's okay. So you were 13 when your mother passed away.
Yes.
And you have 2 siblings.
Yes.
What is the age difference between you and your siblings?
We're all 18 months apart, and I'm the youngest.
And you're the youngest.
Yes.
18 months isn't a huge amount, but how was being the youngest and growing up in that type of family dynamic? How did did you step into that role? Did you I know for like a lot of people, like if the oldest member usually kind of takes on the new I guess like parent role. How did you kind of change your role in that transition from your mother's passing into young adulthood?
My oldest sister, when my mother died, was 16. And she really did try very hard to mother us. And then when you're 16, that's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And my middle sister was withdrawn and not as easy to console, I guess. I think it made us as sisters very close. And relationships that I think are beyond compare. I can't imagine not having sisters. And I never had a brother, so I can't imagine having a brother. In any event, I think that we all grew up very quickly, basically. And my father, at the same time, was 10 years older than my mother, so he was in his 60s, and he was never well. He was present, but not able to really be a parent figure. He was, that's really unfair. He did the best that he could.
Mm-hmm.
And he also, I think, was very responsible for our intellectual development. He read to us. He was an intellectual person himself, and we had many long discussions. So I was fortunate to have a loving mother and a father who had many intellectual interests. And
so I never met your father, I believe he passed away before I was born.
I'm sure.
Or yeah. So it's interesting to hear about like your relationship with him, because I didn't really hear that much about him. How old was my mom when your father passed?
Oh,
She was about 6. She died in 68. She was born in 62. So
she was 6 years old.
6 years old.
I doubt that she could remember him. Although if you ask her, I'm sure she does remember some things. We visited them on Sunday, and they lived in a little row house, which is where I grew up in Philadelphia. And the other person who was very influential in my life, who I must mention, was my aunt, who was my father's sister. She owned the house, and she was not a mother figure, but she was a very important figure in our lives. And she ended up basically living with Grandpop and our family. And your mother would certainly remember her.
Oh yeah, I've heard stories about her.
So we were fortunate that we had adults in our lives who were big influences, as most children do. But, and so I felt that I was blessed.
That's really nice. So the relationship with you and your sisters, because I know, like, even at my age, I realized that your relationship with siblings changes, especially when they start families, like Sarah. My relationship with her has completely changed since she started her own family. How would your role as how did your role as a sibling change growing up? Because I know you guys were very close, but how did it change as you guys developed families and kind of grew up?
Well, we all had children pretty much at the same time. And fortunately, our children, who are now first cousins, have always maintained a very close relationship, like you and your cousins.
Yeah.
And I attribute that to the relationship that my sisters and I had. And when you're a young mother and you're sharing that experience with your sisters, that's a shared experience too.
Yeah.
You know, your relationship evolves with whatever status your life is at the time. My sisters, now one has died, the other one is, you know, needs to care for her husband. So your relationship changes as your situation changes. I, just as you do, love my sisters and always will.
Yeah.
And you're fortunate because you have two sisters who love you.
Yes, I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't tell. Just kidding. Yeah, well, I've always just been, you know, growing up, like seeing my mom interact with her siblings and me interacting with my cousins. I always just thought that was kind of normal, but not everyone has that relationship with their cousins, or their aunts or their uncles, the way that they do. And you know, and it's been nice for my family because we kind of have that dynamic to kind of, you know, it's a nice model to try and live up to. You know, we see how, like, family comes first with my mom and her family, and you guys. So we just try and, like, match that tenacity of love that you guys have for each other. So I'm going to, let's see. And if I'm looking down, it's not that I'm not listening. I'm just kind of writing I'm writing notes and kind of, like, thinking how I can take the next question.
Get your recorder going?
I do have the recorder going.
That's good.
Yes. And we're at full battery, so we're good. All right, so we kind of jumped right into the more serious questions right off the bat. So I'm gonna, well, the next one is pretty serious as well, but this is more interpretive, and you know, whatever just pops in your mind, just kind of go off of that. But it's kind of a series of questions, and the first one would be, how would you identify yourself? Like, what are your most identifying factors when you think about yourself? And you can take your time to think about this.
I think of myself as a survivor. I think of myself as fortunate. Sometimes too anxious for approval. Not sometimes, all the time. Some of the traits that you have as a child, they don't change, they may mature, but your personhood doesn't seem to basically change. I like attention, I like approval, I don't mind being the center of attention.
The youngest child complex.
So I don't think that your personality changes a lot. Hopefully you get a little more mature. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm childish and try to be loving. And it's impossible after spending 66 years intimately with another human being not to be influenced by that. Mm-hmm. So, you know, Grandpop is a part of me. It's pretty hard to split the personality.
Yeah. You can't get rid of him at this point. You're stuck. He's a part of you. So I want to ask a question, and you don't have to answer this in too much detail if you don't like to. So you said that you're anxious for approval, and that doesn't really change throughout your lifetime. You know, you always have that trait, but I'm sure the types of approval that you are seeking change throughout your life. What are some things that you're kind of like anxious for approval these days? Like, what are some things that you want people to see in you?
Well, I don't know that a lot of the anxiety I have has to do with health issues. And they're kind of built in from years and years of that. My feeling of approval is that I overthink how I look, what I'm wearing. It's important to me.
Well, you always look good, so.
And then I wish that I were more introspective and not so superficial. But I'm working on it. Well, it's work in progress.
Yeah. Well, you recognizing that is so is important, and I think that's that's enough to say that it's more of the actual anxiety than any type of loss of connectedness to the now and kind of like the less material stuff. That's really interesting because I have that same problem, and my mom definitely has that trait as well. And I think maybe some of my mom's sisters also kind of have that trait as well. I think that's kind of like been passed down. That's definitely a family thing. So that's how you define yourself. If a stranger were to just meet you, or someone that you can answer these separately, but how would other people identify you? How do you think like the world sees you? Either from the perspective of a stranger or someone very intimate and close to you?
I'm always looking at it from my perspective, but when I meet people, I find almost everybody interesting. So I'm more interested in them than in what they're thinking about me. That sounds counter from what I just said.
Yeah.
But I am always amazed at the people that I meet, and generally like them or find something about them that I like. So that maybe, I don't know, John, maybe my delight in people has something to do with just the interaction that I get back from them. I don't know. It's hard. Your question is, how do I try to get them to approve of me, since I said this is important?
Yeah, it's kind of a loaded question because you never know what people actually think of you.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that, that idea of self where like you picture the way you look in your mind, and then you look in the mirror and you're like, that's how I look. I didn't think I looked like that. Like I picture myself as like a 12-year-old boy or something else. So, this is just kind of like, so there's three types of identity to yourself, and I'm probably butchering this, but it's the way you perceive yourself, the way you think people perceive you, and then the way people actually perceive you. So like, and they're all completely, theoretical, and there's no way to know, how you actually are perceived by other people. But I was just kind of curious to how you think people perceive you, because I know, like the way my mom perceives you is extremely poised and powerful and serious. And I don't know if you think that the general public might think that as well. And I know like there's a lot of ageism and stigma that kind of goes into being an adult, and if that kind of affects the way you think people might interact with you or perceive you. But that's just me generalizing. So
I think that I like people generally, and I find them interesting and fascinating. And I think if you like people and you find them interesting, they'll like you.
I think that's a very good way to think of things.
I'm always amazed when I meet somebody and find most of them really interesting. I never have lost that. Not always, that doesn't mean that sometimes I walk away and think, whoa.
Yeah.
But always interesting.
Yes. Good or bad, they're always interesting.
Yes. And mostly good. And the older I get, and where we're living now, we live with people of our own generation, and they're all survivors. I mean, basically, amazingly so for many of them, and generally kind. And then there's some who aren't, because we're just human. And when I do something that is not nice, I'm very, very ashamed of myself. And I've been known to do that. I couldn't resist.
Yeah, that's just human nature, though, is to
Yes.
To act
Up every
on
morning,
a whim.
meaning to do well.
So my next question, and this is a very simple question, is what are you good at? What are some skills that you are proud of? And they could be from the most mundane, simple thing to, something very complex.
I'm trying to think seriously. When I think of skills, I think of people who are good at this or good at that. And I can't think of a skill that I can say I'm good at other than talking.
Talking?
Seriously. And I didn't even know that other people would interpret that as a skill, because it depends on...
No, that's a skill. Anything that you think you excel at is a skill, and it's useful. It's a tool.
Well, I think also, I don't think of this as a skill, but I don't mind being alone as much as I like to be sociable, because I can always lose myself reading. And that's not a skill, it's a reality.
Well, I was going to say, I know that you're an incredible reader, and my mother kind of got that from you. I unfortunately did not, but that's definitely a skill, and that's a very extremely important skill today too.
Well, it's my retreat. And again, I go back to my father being a big influence. And when I was a young child, I was sick a lot. And my father would read to me endlessly, and had a big influence.
Yeah.
I think reading to children, and I know that your mother always did that, is one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah. Well, I think something that you and my mother both have very strong characteristics is kind of challenging yourself intellectually and always trying to learn something new, which is something I try and strive to do, and I usually have conversations with my mom about different things that we've learned or read, and try and change each other's or give each other perspective, and I feel like she definitely got that from you. All right, I'm trying to rush through these because I still have a couple more questions, and I'm going to pick some of the more interesting ones. Another simple question. So you said reading is one of your hobbies. Do you have another hobby that you might have just started, something that's new, something that you want to start, or maybe a hobby that like you had in the past that you want to start back up? Are there any like other hobbies other than reading that you kind of like are part of your life, or that you have an interest in starting?
The only thing I can say is I've gotten more involved in going to exercise, and I particularly like yoga. And for many years, I enjoyed water aerobics, but now I do mostly yoga and other strengthening exercises. And I don't know that that's a hobby so much as a health necessity.
No, that's a hobby. That's
I feel is completely important.
How has, because like the health, being in public health, the health world has dramatically and drastically changed, especially in the last 50 years or so. How has your idea of physical health changed throughout your life? And like you said, you're getting into exercise now, and yoga probably, I don't even think it was a thing. Maybe the hippies did it in the 70s. I don't know, but it wasn't as big as it is now. How has your idea of physical health and your practice of physical health changed throughout your life?
I remember exercising many, many years ago in front of the television set on the living room floor to Jane Fonda. That's how far back that goes. So I was always interested in that and always active physically, skating, doing anything that was physical I enjoyed. And I, try to take advantage of that now because it's very convenient where we live to have that available. It doesn't sound like a hobby. It sounds to me like just a necessity. I don't really have hobbies. I was never, I did sew when the children were growing up. That was a necessity. I made some clothing for them, but I'm not, I'm not a skilled anything.
Yeah. Well, what about travel?
Oh, travel, of course. We have been fortunate to be able to travel, and it's important to do it when you physically can. So there's many hobbies. I'd like to go to the theater in New York. That's a hobby, but one that you can only do, as you can afford it.
Yeah.
And art museums. I love the museums.
Have you always had an interest in art, or has that kind of like grown?
Yes. Again, I don't know this really. My father, during the Depression, worked at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, so we spent a lot of time down there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was like
that's really
home somewhat. And I enjoy going to the Philadelphia Orchestra, and that's something that I got from Grandpa. He is much more of a music lover than I am. And he understands classical music. He loves it more, and I enjoy it because of his enjoyment of it. And that's something that we do enjoy together.
Yeah. It's always really nice picking up a hobby and enjoying it through somebody else, and then kind of like learning how to enjoy that. I think that's like, really beautiful, and that's definitely something that, I look forward to experience, and it's definitely something I have experienced as well. Some other questions. Would you consider yourself a feminist?
was like, Of course I do, but I don't consider myself feminist as we think of it now.
Okay. That was just an opening question because I want to ask you, how has, because whether you like it or not, or whether you kind of, whether it's on your mind or not, I feel like growing up, especially in an earlier time period, growing up as a woman must have had a significant impact on who you are and how you perceive the world and how the world perceives you. How would you say how has your role as a woman changed, and how has the world kind of changed around you when it comes to treating women, and then at kind of like maybe at different ages have you and this is a lot, I'm asking you a lot of things at once, this is bad interview etiquette, but how has your role as a woman kind of changed throughout your lifetime?
Well, I certainly historically saw changes in every way that you can think of. I can even equate what I'm seeing now, that women have so much more, and I hate the word equality so much, but they pay it's a whole different perception. When I was a young woman, the expectations were that you would marry and have children, and that the husband would provide a living and you would take care of the children. Economically, that was possible. I think when I was an adult and my children were gone, for all intents and purposes, I went back to school and got my college degree. And I worked for 10 years, and I always said it was the best 10 years. I shouldn't say that, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. My whole perception of myself was changed. I became, running meetings. This was a relatively long time ago, so I'm not saying that women were treated equally, but the vice presidents that I report to as a woman, we have strong women role models that were younger than me that I worked for. I ended up having people who reported to me, including men, and some of those younger men initially resented it. So I experienced a lot of that. And I think that going into the business world, I suddenly wasn't the wife, the mother, the grandmother. I was another person. And I see women now having opportunities and also challenges, because they still, as I see with your mother and with Allie, your sister and Allie, having a lot of responsibility of juggling careers and family. It's not easy. Does that answer the question?
No, yeah, I'm just like processing that all. That's I think that's amazing, and that's something I really didn't really know about you as well. And I'm assuming that 10-year period of work kind of stays with you today, even when you are out of work, and how you perceive yourself.
I had to learn to stand up and speak and conduct meetings and do some traveling and like I was another person.
That's beautiful.
And when our first grandchild was born, Christopher, Aunt Martha said, I guess you'll quit your job and stay home and help take care of. And I said, no, I guess you'll stay home and take care of it.
So we're wrapping up. I got about 2 or 3 minutes left, so I'm gonna just ask. So I won't hold you too much longer. I think I have like 2 more questions.
That's fine.
Are you doing all right?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Fine. Listen, who doesn't want to talk about themselves?
I know that. This is. I really wish I'd done this, 10 years ago. This is amazing. I'm trying to think. I have a couple questions. They're all kind of very similar, so I'm trying to think of the best way to ask it. I'll ask this question. What are some things that you look forward to?
Well, I'm looking forward in smaller chunks of time. I'm looking forward to coming to North Carolina in the beginning of May and visiting. We're looking forward to getting together with friends that we've traveled with for a weekend. I'm looking forward to going to New York to see a show in October. And I'm looking forward to watching my grandchildren and their lives evolving. And Grandpapa is looking forward to weddings. No pressure.
I gotta graduate first, Grandma, and maybe get a job.
Grandpa. So because of our family, we have so much to look forward to. It's just wonderful. I mean, I'm looking forward to a new little granddaughter provided by Allie, and another little great grandson. A new baby is wonderful. I look forward to the fact that you're graduating. Seriously. In fact, I know you're walking in May.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And what date is your graduation?
It's May 11th, Friday, May 11th. And then I have to do some stuff over the summer, but yeah, it's pretty much all over after in about 2.5 weeks.
What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to changing my role from student to, active citizen, and really start making some moves in my life, and just being done with school. Me and school are not best of friends, and I've always loved work, and I'm kind of looking forward to being free of the shackles of modern education.
I understand that.
Yes. And then I think I only just have one question left for you. Well, it's kind of split into a couple of questions, but
Oh, I forgot to mention I'm looking forward to the election.
Oh yeah, me too. Oh gosh. Multiple elections, yeah.
Hopefully.
How have you changed the most throughout your lifetime?
Hopefully, I've matured. That happens without your having too much to say about it. But having said that, I don't think people basically change. I think that there's some core personality that doesn't change terribly much. There's maturity, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm a little wiser than I was.
I'd say so.
More loving. That's my wish and hope.
And then this is just the last part, and you kind of even answered this at the very beginning, but and it's just split into 3 sections, and you don't have to go into too much detail, but what would you tell your 20-year-old self, or your 25-year-old self, my age, now experience what you've experienced in life?
What would I 25-year-old self. As looking back at what I know now.
Yes. If you could travel back in time and tap yourself on the shoulder and give a piece of advice.
I would say, keep trying to write.
Keep trying to write?
Mm-hmm.
Did you always want to be a writer?
I think I did.
Have you ever thought about picking it back up today?
I don't know.
No?
No. I did write. I tried to write and send things to magazines when I was very young, and really young with having babies. And then I wrote in school out of necessity and got a lot of delight in creative writing. So I think if I could do something again, I would try that.
It's not too late.
Not too late.
Not too late to pick it up.
Grandpa was a wonderful writer, actually.
You were a wonderful writer? Who is?
Grandpa.
Grandpa?
Oh, yeah.
Does Grandpa still write today?
He writes all of the greeting cards.
All the greeting cards for the community?
All the birthday cards. He writes all the messages.
I always love your birthday cards and your Christmas cards. They're always so beautifully written and touching and
yes, it's not me.
It's all Grandpa. Okay, now I know.
Address the cards and he writes them.
And then this is just kind of redundant, but I was just going to ask you if you would give a different piece of advice to your 40-year-old self and your 60-year-old self.
Yes.
Okay.
I would be more patient.
Be more patient.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you say that?
Because, when I say patient, I mean patient with yourself. Be more accepting, more patient, and with other people. Mm-hmm. It's just, and I don't like to say it comes from maturity because it's not a matter of maturity. It's just a matter of fact.
Yeah.
You evolve.
Yeah.
Or you.
Well, I feel like, your concept of time, changes when you get older. Even at 25, I'm starting to experience that a little bit now. And so I can't imagine, when I look back on, my younger years, if I were, your age, how I would perceive these small chunks of time, which probably seemed like a huge, time right now. Like my time in school, just seems to be going on forever. But, by the time I'm older, I might look back and just a minuscule moment of time that I, just enjoy when I'm there.
My piece of advice to your heart.
Yeah.
No regrets.
What was that? No regrets.
No regrets.
That's good. I'm glad you don't have any regrets.
Yeah. I'm telling you to, no regrets.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I try to think about that sometimes.
No, just no regrets.
All right. That's all my questions. Do you have any questions you wish I asked you?
You could have asked me how many different colors I had dyed my hair over my No, I thought it was an extremely introspective and interesting conversation. And I am just so self-centered that I loved every minute of it.
I don't think you're self-centered.
Who doesn't want to talk about themselves?
Oh, no.
A handsome young man who
Yeah,
happens to be your grandson. I can't think of a more fun way to spend a time.
I've had such a good time this morning. I've learned a lot. I always, sometimes...
I've learned a lot about you.
I'm glad you have. It's always tough getting together, especially like me growing up in North Carolina. When I go to visit you, there's...
It's a party.
You got 15 other grandkids running around, and you got great grandkids now, and I don't always have these opportunities to, to sit down and get deep with you, and so this has meant a lot to me, like a lot.
And to me, obviously.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I love you, Grandma.
I love you too, John. You're going to make me cry.
All right, I'll cut that out for right now. Yeah, I don't want to cry either. So, yeah, that's all I have. Grandpa, sorry I didn't interview you. I hope you're not jealous.
I say I'm not as interesting as your grandmother.
My next interview will be of you.
I would have given you much shorter answers, and they would probably have gotten a C in the year.
Because he would have answered your questions instead of going on and on and on.
Grandpa, how do you think Grandma answered her questions? Do you think she answered pretty truthfully?
No, absolutely. I think Grandma only tells the truth. I don't think she fabricates anything. She's really pretty honest, and
sometimes you do.
And I think she can be objective too. I think about herself even to some extent.
Yeah.
Which is hard for people to do. Yeah.
Mhm.
So no, I think she did okay.
I think she did great.
Get an A, get a double A.
I'll get at least an A. Yeah. A plus. Yeah. So now I'm gonna.
Wonderful that you and Grandma could spend this much time together. I think it's really good, and I think she learned a lot about you in the process.
Absolutely.
I think that your approach to this was extremely intelligent. I thought that you were very professional in this. I thought you did a really good job.
Well, I tried to be professional for my grade, but I still want, I started to poke a little bit in some of the things that,
No, you did okay. You did really well. I thought.
I think an A plus.
I was impressed. I really was impressed. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I think it was good, and even as just a listener, I enjoyed the whole thing too.
What did you guys learn about me?
Well, I think that you're pretty serious. I think the fact that you approach this in a professional way, and that you were pretty well organized, and I think that's a good indication of your talent. I think you really did a good job in this. I think.
I'll tell you what, Grandpa, I'm really good at BSing.
I mean, we always thought that, but it comes across that you really are thoughtful, and that you are considerate,
introspective.
Yeah.
And that
and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, originally, there's a woman.
And then you love us. Obviously, all of our grandchildren love us, but it's not always as demonstrative as you were in this, I think.
Yeah. No, yeah, I wanted to learn as much as I could about you guys, as well as, get the material I needed for my class. I was going to originally. Oh God! Oh come on!
Something paused. I think you're done.
Yeah, someone was sending me a message. So originally, there's a woman at my work, at the coffee shop I work at. She comes in every day, and she's an older individual, and me and her have gotten to know each other, not super well, but she also comes into my other work where I wait tables. So I always try and stop and talk to her, and I was planning on interviewing her just because it was, I guess, more convenient. She's in the building that I work at, and I could always stop in there. And I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to figure out how to interview you guys via FaceTime. And then I kind of had this realization that I needed to, I needed this for to get down and really get close with you guys. So
I think you achieved that objective. I think that when we communicate like this and talk about a lot of inside stuff, that we do get closer. I think we did.
Yes.
I think we did. I think you succeeded in doing that. And we benefited from that too.
Yeah, I'm just glad I didn't cry.
No tears, no.
Well,
and give our best to Leah.
I
Yes.
will.
Love
I can't wait. I really want her to, to listen to all this hour and well, now we're going on an hour and 10 minutes.
We're looking forward to when you move to Philadelphia. So.
Yeah. My mom just as we were talking.
Philadelphia.
My mom has been sending me emails of job opportunities in Philadelphia. So we're gonna start that. I'm working on getting past May 11th right now, and
And
then
I think that's a good.
that's when I'm gonna start
Now look,
figuring it out.
does Baltimore seriously have Villanova?
Villanova.
The Eagles? Do they have the
Eagles.
76ers?
No, they don't have the Sixers. Oh yeah. Have you guys been watching all the sports? With all the playoffs.
Yeah, right.
Did you see James and Taylor were at the game last night, the Flyers game?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, they got like last minute tickets from Taylor's coworker, and they were like 10 yards behind the Pittsburgh bench. And James sent me a video of him absolutely just berating all the Pittsburgh fans and the whole entire bench just yelling profanities at them. I was very jealous, and I was looking for them on TV, but we ended up getting smacked 5-0, so that was sad.
Well, it is very delightful to me that my grandchildren all enjoy each other, sometimes more so than they should.
Yeah. Sometimes we get carried away.
So, we're looking for a wedding here.
All right, yeah. Well, you got Allie's engaged now, so you got one on the way.
That's that, yeah. We want that, yeah.
All right. Well, that's all I have for you guys, and
Okay, well,
Thank you again.
good luck with your report. I'm sure you'll
thanks,
be
Grandma.
fine.
Thanks, Grandpa.
Yeah, okay. We
And
love you.
whoever your teacher is,
Huh?
tell him it's either an A or he has to deal with me.
I'll let her know. Yeah, I'll send that threat her way.
The teacher wants to do that.
All right. Bye, guys. I love you guys.
I love you. I love you.
Bye-bye, John.
Bye-bye, dear.
Bye-bye.